Scientists use AI to analyze 1.6 million brain scans to develop a tool to predict dementia risk.
And what this platform does is it enables a fully automated analysis of tissue sections from lung cancer patients.
But it has 21 petabytes of aggregate memory bandwidth.
They have a couple of features that are just a little bit easier to use now inside of Chrome. One of them is Google Lens.
Aloha, everybody, and welcome to the Daily AI Show Live. It's Wednesday, and that means it's news day. So let's bring you all the breaking AI news for today. And I am joined today with Beth and Brian, and I am Jyunmi. So I'm going to shoot it over to Brian. Brian, what is your most exciting story you got?
This is one that I think is kind of cool. I have two, actually, but I think one of them is kind of a fun one. Just because, everybody works with different models. Some people like Claude or Anthropic because it does this a certain way, or we like ChatGPT, or sometimes we like Gemini in a lot of cases. It really depends on the use case. But what I thought was interesting was a couple of days ago, Anthropic published their system prompts for their 3 different models, which I thought was really cool because Anthropic is obviously just trying to distinguish themselves from competitors and be very open and, friendly and forward-facing and saying, hey, this is what we're doing. But also, I think it's a good reminder, as a TechCrunch article showed, that really without this sort of prompting, these models really are dumb. They don't know what to do. They don't have any, consciousness. I mean, Beth, you're already always talking about this idea that, until you ask, it produces and predicts the next, word or chunks of letters or tokens in the sense. And this is one way of seeing this, by Anthropic showing us what they're telling Claude it is, how to interact, what features it has. Begs the question, well, if I kind of know what it is, and of course we don't know what they were trained on, so I can't say that, OpenAI and Claude's trained models are the same. They're certainly not. But it begs the question, can I get ChatGPT to act more like Claude if I give ChatGPT the Claude thing? So I did. So I can share that really quick and show you what that looks like. Give me 1 second to pull it up on the screen. And, I've had a little bit of time to sort of look at the two of them. And my initial reaction, not just for the sake of this story, my initial reaction is that I actually do like the Claude version in this particular case, or the add it to the stage. There we go. All right. So you can see my prompt at the top, but if you can't, what I did was I quickly used the transcript from our past episode about will AI revolutionize the fast food ordering in fast food restaurants. This was about a week ago we talked about this, maybe on last Tuesday. I said, help me write a blog on this topic using the content from this previous podcast. I want the blog to follow all best SEO practices and be extremely helpful and insightful for the reader. Also, be sure to quote the podcast host when it makes sense. Now, I wanted to give it a prompt that I felt like is something I would actually use Claude for. I like ChatGPT, but Claude is better, usually, in this case. I feel like it's better. So you can see right here what it did was it said, all right, to write a blog post. And I didn't ask it for this. I thought this was pretty cool. And by the way, this is just literally a custom GPT that all it has on the back end of the custom GPT is I turned off searching because Claude doesn't have that. I turned on code interpreter because Claude can look at documents and we wanted to be able to do that in this case. And that's basically it. Otherwise, I literally copied and pasted it straight from Anthropic. I didn't change any names. I didn't say you have these special rules or anything. So basically, he gave us a blog outline, which I love because I didn't ask for that. But I thought it was kind of great that I got a blog outline first because this is actually how I would write a blog. And then down below here, we got a draft. Now, we don't have time to kind of look through all this with trying to cover other news today, but you can kind of take it from me or maybe we'll share this in the newsletter. I think this is actually really well written. And it does, to me, feel initially a little bit more like a Claude type result. And so we can compare and contrast this really quickly by just using GPT 4.0. So not a custom GPT, no Claude previous prompt to it. There's nothing overlaying this, right? It's literally the same prompt with the same document. And in this particular case, we don't get the outline, although I don't know that that's specifically a Claude thing. That's just sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. That's the That's the fun of using an LLM. You don't quite ever know what you're going to get. But as much as like I do like the way it broke things down, if you look at the intro sentence, I felt like the intro paragraph or sentences, the hooks in there were better on the Claude version of this. I liked the way it was overlaid, and I liked its sort of continuation of the story going through it. So very, look, it's one use case, but it just begs the question that, can you train other models to act like other models if you have that system prompt on the front end? And I mean, look, it's a use case of one. But just in this one and writing a blog, I can see it. I can see the difference. And I would say between the two, if they were side by side, as I look at it, I would pick the Claude version of GPT-4o, which makes me think, is that something you could just add to your basic custom instructions?
Right. I was just about to ask, is
too long?
Is that going to show up in that for you?
You would need would need to truncate it because it's only like 1,500 characters. But it's too long. But yes, you could, or obviously you could do what I did, which was just create a custom GPT if you wanted to run things through. This is a good example if you wanted to just compare and contrast, almost like in the playground, a 4.0 versus a Claude. It's not going to be the same thing. I'm not saying, oh my God, we just recreated Claude in ChatGPT. That's not what I'm saying. But it is a fun experiment. Anybody can literally do it. You just need to go over to, I'll just pull it back up on the screen really quick, over to this, it's on Anthropic. So it's like docs.anthropic.com, and then you can find it in there. But this is literally where the prompts are. So this is the prompt, the Claude 3.5 Sonnet prompt, which is fairly long. And what's interesting to me is both the Opus and the Haiku are much, much shorter. Haiku, I would have guessed. Opus, I would have guessed would have been a longer prompt, but maybe it's just a better trained model and it needs less in the initial prompting to do a better job. So really interesting to look at, like almost double the length for Sonnet to Opus. It's almost like Opus just didn't need a lot of that background information because it may just have a larger database, a large training database, and it's just a more powerful model because of how much is in there. So just really interesting on that point as well. So I have a Google thing, but I'll leave that for after you.
All right.
Just a quick comment on that. It makes me wonder what the difference is between 3 and 3.5, right? Because Sonnet, the longer prompt, is the only 3.5 in that list, even though the date on the Opus and the Haiku says it's July 2024. So obviously updated, but now like, okay, like what did you do? What's that 0.5?
Right. Maybe the extra length of the Sonnet prompt helps activate more of its capabilities. Well, I wanted to take a quick second before we moved on to the next story to welcome Andy. Andy, thanks for joining the show. And thank you to everyone who joins us every morning. And I hear that we have more people, new people joining us in chat. So Fateme, thank you for joining, and hope you enjoy the show. All right, so let's get on to the next story. Beth, do you have a story that's been at your forefront?
Okay, so this is now we're shifting to medical. I've mentioned a couple times, I believe, that my mother had Alzheimer's. And there is a story out of the UK. Scientists use AI to analyze 1.6 million brain scans to develop a tool to predict dementia risk. So we've talked before about how there are like radiologist scans being created or perhaps even in beta that identify breast cancer before a human eye using just human AI or eye to identify breast cancer before humans can detect it. This seems to be the same thing for dementia, which seems really exciting. And so it's in Scotland. Researchers will use artificial intelligence to match the image data of patients from Scotland with linked health records. There's a bunch. There was also a story about AI being used to create new cancer drugs. And like we hear a lot about what's happening in terms of development in tech, and we hear a little bit about what's happening in medicine. But I actually think what's happening in medicine is by far the more impactful AI. It's just
I couldn't agree more. That's fantastic. And I kind of wanted to jump in because I have a story that's within the same theme. Let's take a look at good in AI, or AI for good. So the University of Cologne in Germany has just released that their team of researchers have created a digital pathology platform based on AI. And what this platform does is it enables a fully automated analysis of tissue sections from lung cancer patients. So it overall improves lung cancer diagnosis, right? But the key thing that they're really hoping to get out of this is that they're showing that their platform can also help analyze a treatment for that particular patient's diagnosis, which is that one step further. So this seems like fantastic news to me, and they're looking to do a wide variety for their next stage of tests. So they're looking at not just Germany, but also Japan and other countries like that. So I felt that was thematically appropriate, so I wanted to hop in with that. Beth, unless you have another story, we can hop over to Andy.
Yeah, let's do everybody's first round.
All right, Andy, what's your most interesting story you got?
So I'm shifting over to the maelstrom of excitement that's surrounding the Nvidia release of their Q2 results after the market closes today. So there's been a lot of talk about, AI is really not all that. And, this is all going to be a bubble and it's going to slow down because there aren't that many companies getting much value out of the enormous investments being made. But Nvidia, continues to be promising in the respect that there's still a huge backlog on deliveries of these incredibly expensive, billions and billions of dollars worth of chips. So what happens in the Q2 results is going to have a profound influence on all the AI stocks. So there's a precipitous moment here happening. Now, the news that I want to talk about, though, is, and by the way, like a slight sidebar news, one of the other major AI stocks is called Supermicro. And Supermicro just dropped on nearly 20% today. That's a huge drop because there was a short seller who said there's glaring accounting irregularities in their reporting, and that's a short seller, so he's trying to push the stock down. So he won big on this one. But what happened was Supermicro had to delay the release of their report because they said they had to examine more carefully, what their financials saw. It's a little scary that, maybe there was an overstatement of results for Supermicro, which is another chip company. Right. So in the world of chips, Nvidia is going to face increasing competition. You know about Grok with a Q, which performs inference on transformer models much, much faster than the Nvidia line of chips does. Well, one of the players that is out there, the other major player who's kind of challenging Nvidia in this area is called Cerebras. Now, Cerebras, literally yesterday, announced a lot of information about their inference engine called Wafer scale engine. So here's some stats on it. So this is being run against open source models, and it says Cerebras inference runs Llama 3.1 20 times faster than GPUs do at 1/5 the price. And it's doing about 1,800 tokens per second, which is 2.4 times faster than Grok with a Q when running against Llama 3.18 billion. Now, that Cerebras is the only platform that can run Llama 3.1 70 billion on a single platform. But to do that, it requires 4 of their chips on that platform. And this reminds me that we see when we talk about chips anymore, we see like Jensen Huang holding up this massive box, which is really a little computer. It's made up of a lot of chips, but there's this one inference chip that's in there called the GPU that's connected to all these others, but they gang these things together. So you can't just say a chip anymore. You've got to understand just how many of those have been ganged together. So the way they do that is they solve a memory bandwidth problem that is the shuttling of information into the compute core, which is the actual deep neural network. And the problem with transformers is that every single token has to run through that entire network of billions of parameters in serial, right? They have to do sequentially. So Cerebras technology, achieves really high speed inference by basically putting petabytes of memory into their platform. So just a huge, huge increase in the, specifically the WSE3, which that 3, I think, means they probably have 3 of their inference chips on that one box, but it has 21 petabytes of aggregate memory bandwidth. Petabytes are beyond imagination. So they're really cramming a huge amount of stuff in these things. But all of this bodes well for us in terms of the speed of response, right? Quality of response will be the same, but the speed of response will be tremendously faster when you solve this memory shuttling problem, for GPUs. And Cerebras has just released those tools. So we'll see. Will my stock holding in Nvidia collapse this afternoon? Or I think Cerebras.
It's super exciting, and I actually do have a theme connected story with that. Broadcom apparently just won 2 major AI ASIC programs, both for Google, Meta, and OpenAI. And so in the chip making world, ASIC is application-specific integrated circuit, right? So they're smaller chips, but what they do is they do one thing and one thing only. But when they do it extremely efficiently and extremely quickly. So Broadcom, one of the longest running and larger of the chip manufacturers, is now getting in the AI chip market, and may be another competitor for Nvidia with these new ASIC chips that they're developing to run AI models specifically for the other big tech companies like OpenAI, Meta, and Google. So I thought that was another theme story. So thank you, Andy. Now, Brian, I know you said you got some other fun stuff. What do you got for us?
Well, I think we got a 2-part here because I want to talk about Google, and then Beth has a different Google story, so maybe we can do those together really quick. But what I wanted to talk about really quick was Google, as part of what they're doing with their AI labs, and they have a couple of features that are just a little bit easier to use now inside of Chrome. One of them is Google Lens. So that's been around for a while. It's not like that's new. I've actually pinned it up here, and what you can do is very quickly grab Google Lens, and you can see it. It's sort of waiting for me to grab a picture like you would. Well, you can't see it, but it looks like a Snagit. So if I do that, it's not showing it. It's not pulling it up because of the screen. Okay, well, on my screen, just to the right of those shoes, it's pulled up a new menu because I grabbed a picture of that data center, and on the right side of my screen, in sort of a new window, which is why it's not showing it on our screen. It's pulling up a whole lot of information, either because it's exactly that image of those boxes of data center, or because there are other stories about data center. And so you can actually do this anywhere, like in an article. I could actually snag pictures if I was like, oh, I really like that shoe. I could do it on an ad. It doesn't matter. I can do it on graphs. I can do it on a whole bunch of other stuff. So Google Lens is one thing I wanted to share because I think it's super cool. It's actually something I think I'll use quite a bit. There's quite often a time where you're in the middle of a site, or, I was just watching a different one on Reuters where it had charts, and I'm like, oh, I want to look more into that chart. Google Lens screen grab the chart. All of a sudden I get a pop-up on my right side that talks more about it. Now, the other thing you can do too, and I'm realizing Let me do this. Just give me a second. Instead of sharing the tab, I need to share the screen. So just give me 1 sec. Because otherwise you're not going to be able to see the URL at the top, and that's what you need.
Gotcha.
So let's just do this one different way.
So while Brian's bringing that up, Beth,
thanks.
do you have a quick story?
Yes. So Google also released 3 experimental models yesterday. They are updates to their regular models. So Gemini updates. Gemini 1.5 Pro, the experimental model that had been in, was August 0801. Now it's 0827. Both models are available in the playground. So that's kind of interesting. Like if you want to compare what the update did, the new experiment is better at writing code and understanding complex instructions. All of it is experimental, so don't build on these right now. But it's great to have access to this kind of stuff, and that's the Google AI Studio.google.com. They also released an experimental improved Flash model, 1.5 Flash. Overall enhancements, better on internal tests, that kind of stuff. Flash is better at understanding, being prompted with examples, right? Like we were talking about the other day. And they released a 1.5 tiny Flash. Like they released another Flash that's even smaller than the regular Flash. And it's maybe 8B. It's not on the thing that I'm looking at, which I thought was going to summarize all 3. But again, like really interesting to be able to get access to these. They're free. Go play with them in the AI Studio. The upgraded 1.5 Pro experimental model ranks as number 2 in the chatbot arena, and the updated Flash experimental ranks at number 6 in the chatbot arena. So
okay, all right, Brian, show us what you got.
Okay, so now that we're actually sharing the window, I can actually show you the Google Lens. So now you can actually see me grabbing and dragging and dropping, which is what I was trying to show you before.
Oh, okay.
Here's the pop-up on the other side that I was just referring to. So I wanted to show you what that looked like, and you can pin it right up to your top if you want to, so you can just grab on it. Also, it will say search with Google Lens sometimes up in the URL bar if Google thinks that's a good idea for you to use Google Lens. So sometimes it'll be right here next to your bookmark or star icon up there. The other thing I wanted to show, though, is now if you go in the Google search bar, if you look right here, I have bookmarks, history, tabs, but the first one is now Gemini. So if I Gemini right from the bar, I can now say, tell me about the U.S. energy problem with AI, right? Because that's kind of what this article was about. And you're going to see that it actually takes me away from our typical Google, takes me into Gemini. This is the free side of Gemini. I'm not paying for advanced. And it gives me the answer directly from the URL bar, which I also think is really cool. You just have to use the @ symbol. I think ideally, as a user, you want to eliminate that extra step from having to do the @ symbol, but it's not a big deal right now. Ideally, what we want to see in the future with Google is however they figure it out. Obviously, they're already using Gemini as part of their search results where you get the summaries at the top and then your sort of typical Google below it. But I do imagine there's some sort of future where I shouldn't have to ask to Gemini. I shouldn't have to say Gemini. Google eventually should be smart enough to go, you know what? That is a search query. That is a natural language question. This is not a SEO search per se. This is a deeper understanding, and I should immediately get this type of Gemini answer, whether it's on the right side of the screen and it splits the screen for me. It says, here's a deep dive into what you just asked. Also, here's 2 or 3 on the left side. Here's 2 or 3 articles that talk deeper about this, kind of like we would see with a Perplexity. So I don't love that I have to add it to go get it. And it brings me to a totally different experience. When we think about the future of Google search, it needs to be a hybrid closer to what Perplexity is doing. But also what Perplexity doesn't have is really this power of like a Gemini bringing up, whether it was writing a blog or whatever it might be doing on the side there. So super cool. I love that they're doing it, but kind of an extra step.
Yeah, I really like how you were demonstrating, just selecting the image. Now, and that got me thinking is, does it also offer capture? So if you highlight a certain image you're bringing up links and stories about it, can you also capture that image that you've cropped around there?
I don't think so, but I can answer it in about 2 seconds. I'm going to take this name.
No worries. It was just a squirrel moment, because I was like, oh, that would be a great way to, capture text or picture from the website that I'm interested in.
Yes. No, you cannot in there. But I always use Snagit. Shout out to Snagit, which is by TechSmith, which is a fantastic tool I've been using. One of the few tools I think I've re-upped year over year and paid, like CC Cleaner, like one of those few tools where you go, you know what, year over year, it's valuable to me. And the annuals come around, they're like, you owe us $30. I'm like, you know what, every year it's worth it still. So it's funny that you have these kind of cool tools, not necessarily AI, just good tools. So that's how I do it when I want to grab that stuff.
So
okay. That's good.
I have a thought. One is, they're going to have to let it, not right now, but they're going to have to let people choose what they want to search with, right? Out of Chrome. Aren't they going to have to do that since they Google? Because that's been a problem by, maybe not if it's Google's Chrome. I don't know. It sounded like
the whole monopoly issue by only having Chrome or only having Internet Explorer or those kind of things.
It's if it's going to know that I want to search that, do I get to say I'd rather you search it with Perplexity?
Not in Chrome. Google's going to say you can have Gemini.
That's a feature of this browser. You got to use our browser to get it.
And the answer to my answer to Jyunmi is, if you can capture it with Windows thing, Google's Lens will OCR your text. Boom, copy text, no problem.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, okay.
So it may not capture it, but it would do all the other things that you would like it to do.
Right. Nice. Cool. All right. Does anybody have another pressing story? Otherwise, I've got some random news from across the web.
Well, I don't necessarily want to be the one to talk about it. I'll pull it up on screen, but I definitely think we should talk about one of the things that's sort of captivated everybody's attention in the last couple of days.
Oh, yeah.
Cursor. But like I said, I don't know that I'm necessarily, what we can do here is just look at the quick demo.
Nicest and most powerful way to code with AI. Cursor comes with uniquely intelligent autocomplete capabilities. In addition to normal end-of-line predictions, Cursor can complete over multiple lines and can even suggest entire.
Okay, I don't want to watch the whole thing. I don't know, Andy or Beth or somebody, can you do a quick summary of why everybody got so excited about Cursor in the last maybe 7 days or so? Because it really dominated sort of the AI nerdy news.
It dominated my AI nerdy weekend. Go, Andy.
I think coding assistants have really been at the heart of what's changing the world of software development, and in internal information technology departments in companies around. GitHub Copilot, which is owned by Microsoft, is the sort of the leader in that space. But Cursor has made a huge splash, in large part, I think, because it enables that kind of code assistance without you necessarily having coding skills, because it integrates an LLM directly into the coding assistant. So you're basically able to converse with your coding assistant, and it does everything that GitHub Copilot can do and more, including all the way up to, you just having a conversation with Cursor, and it will generate all the code necessary to do that. So Beth, you've probably had some experience playing with Cursor that way. I haven't yet done that, but I'm eager to see if it'll replace a lot of the other efforts that are underway to try to develop code. And maybe, the difference is that when you get a block of code, what do you do with that block of code, even if it's going to work? Claude Artifacts lets you, give LLM instructions on what you want as code. It generates the code and then actually presents the code. It's hosting the code and showing you what the output of that code is. Well, Cursor doesn't necessarily do exactly that, unless you correct me on that, Beth. You would actually have to have your own application server somewhere on Amazon Web Services or elsewhere to actually put the code on in order to run it once you've developed it in Cursor.
So that's true. We've talked about coding assistance in terms of Grimoire. At the end of building something with Grimoire, it will put it on Netlify or Netlify. Somebody tell me how to pronounce the thing. And it deploys it for you, and then you claim it. Like that's one of the things that Grimoire did really, really early on. Artifacts will run it for you in Claude will run it for you in the artifacts window, right? Cursor does not do that, but Replit is starting to have like open this in Cursor, or that sort of thing, so that you are automatically kind of deploying a template or doing something like that. As Jyunmi knows, I spent the weekend trying to get it to talk to Replit, and that still hasn't happened yet. But that is not Cursor's fault or Replit's. That has something weird to do with my internet.
Yeah.
And I do want to just bring up this part of it because it was in Andrew Karpathy's or somebody else's X post where he's like, my future is tab, tab, tab. And I didn't know what he was talking about. I knew he was about Cursor, but I knew what he was talking about. So I just pulled this up on screen because just hit tab. Cursor lets you breeze through changes by predicting your next edit. And you do that by hitting tab within it. So I thought that was kind of a cool post because it piqued my interest. I was like, what does he mean? Just tab, tab, tab. I'm not a coder. I definitely think when I look at Cursor, I'm like, ooh, I would still need to have some decent background knowledge, or I would have to work with like a Claude to help me understand where the starting point is. And I feel like maybe Cursor would help, but Beth, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, actually. So but he's a coder, right? So what you're seeing in that is the chat completions. There is also a chat window over on the right where you can highlight code and it explains it to you. When it gives you an error message, you literally highlight the error message that says, move to chat. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, move chat. Chat answers it, right? Like, and when it develops stuff, it's helping you understand, and you really can build something just by speaking English at it, and it will do it.
It's like having a coding Gemini cricket on your shoulder at all times.
Right. And
it's an amazing service and platform, and I believe we've got an episode scheduled for it down the line. So
come back next Thursday.
Yeah, so we can definitely go further deeper into the whole subject. I'm glad someone mentioned Karpathy because I saw a huge uptake after his post on X regarding Cursor plus Sonnet. So if one of the largest names in AI says, please use this, or I'm definitely using this, and I'm replacing my old system with this, that's probably something to pay attention to. I really wanted to just wrap up with a couple of more short stories, and then I'll throw it into, I believe we've got one big story that we want to wrap up with. So a couple of stories on the governance front in AI. It seems that after regulations from EU coming out, and then regulations starting to come out from the US, we are seeing regulations being developed and released in APAC, or the Asian Pacific area. So Japan's coming out with their regulations. And so we're seeing lots of other countries trying to not necessarily get on the bandwagon, but getting up and running with their own regulations. So we should have global, at least a basic set of or an idea of how the world sees AI and what level of priority they have in their lawmaking for governance. The other side story, and I'll just leave it at this. Oh, actually, it's two. I don't know if we mentioned it, but Artifacts now is available for everybody to use, right? So free, Android, iOS, everyone can use Artifacts. If that was a barrier to entry for you, it no longer is. Give it a shot. It looks fantastic. And my final story before we wrap it up is Hydrogels now have memory. Okay, let me give you I'll give you a little this is science, or AI in science. Okay, so if nobody knows what a hydrogel is, and I didn't either, I had to go look it up. Basically, it's a complex polymer that turns into a jelly after stimulation. So essentially, think Jello mode. So a piece of Jello that goes from polymer strands to semi-solid jelly. Now, why this is important for AI? Because of this jelly, this hydrogel, can have two different states. It can go from relaxed to stress state, which means that's ones and zeros, right? You can use this hydrogel to do for that kind of implementation. What the real important part here, apparently from Cell Press, I believe they released a paper in one of the Nature magazines or something like the science magazines, but it's showing the basic building blocks of understanding or learning. So this is a non-living matter that has a form of memory and the potential to learn states because they taught it how to play Pong. Right?
Oh, come on. Who didn't learn by starting to play Pong?
Right? Next, we're going to hear that someone, programmed Doom into it, But
So is the memory the state? Like, does it remember the Jello mold?
So what they've done is they've hooked up to a paddle to play the Pong, and when when it reacts to the stimulus, it can move the paddle, and it remembers the better paddle movement to bounce the Pong ball.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So
and how does it do this as a non-living thing?
We thought AI might take over the world. It's actually going to be the blob.
That's right. Just so
Whenever
you have Jello again
coming after you.
All right. So that's my last story. Really out there stuff, but I don't know where that's going, but that does open up a new path. All right, Brian, take us home.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of in the category of news that just won't die. So we've got to talk about strawberry again. I'm not sure, but I mean, just every week. I mean, good on OpenAI for making sure that we always say the word strawberry. Which, funny side note, if you try to get OpenAI or ChatGPT to count the amount of R's in strawberry, there's been some really funny videos that come out from that, and it very much wants to say two. There's 3 of them in there, and there was a long video about a guy working through that. And at one point he goes, at this point, I'm thinking to myself, am I going crazy? Or is there really, it was so convincing of like why there was only 2 and not 3. So anyway, that's the word strawberry. That's not what we're talking about. Strawberry is the code name. Possibly it was Q-Star initially that OpenAI is talking about. We've certainly talked about this. So what is the new news from yesterday? Well, a website called theinformation.com, which is actually paywall. So it made it a little tough to get all the information, but it eventually trickled into the other news outlets. And here's what I got from it. Okay, strawberry isn't necessarily the next model. This is just my opinion on this, by the way. I'm not saying this is fact. Strawberry isn't the next model. It is what we have understood to be a higher order of reasoning and mathematical ability that will most likely by the fall be added to ChatGPT. So you can think about strawberry as being like kind of an add-on additional reasoning, which would be an enhancement to the model. We can agree on that, but it would be more of an add-on. It also helps with creating synthetic data. Okay, but then there's also a new word that we haven't really, at least I haven't heard before, which is Orion. Orion is apparently the actual next model. We might see that as being the GPT-5, or sometimes it's been called GPT Next. This also might be Orion. So what is Orion? Well, it's the predecessor to GPT 4.0, I guess, is where we are right now. So sooner than later, we might see strawberry in that advanced reasoning come to our typical ChatGPT. But then there's also this other model. And the reason I bring up the synthetic data is because Sam Altman has talked about wanting to use more synthetic data. apparently, based on these news articles, that Strawberry allows an easier way to create good quality, high quality synthetic data. And that synthetic data is being used or has already been used to train on Orion. And the last little piece of information that came out of this was that they've already demoed this to the federal government. And that's kind of where that stopped, is that they've shown what Orion can do. Didn't say anything about why there's delays. There's no conspiracy theories. It was just sort of part of this article. So that's what we know as of now, which is to say we don't really know anything and nothing has really come out. But if this is to be believed, we will see I would say a large order of magnitude improvement in ChatGPT by the end of the year. But there's also a new model that isn't specifically whatever Q-Star or Strawberry adds to it with the higher level reasoning. So as always, we'll have to wait and see. It's a big wait and see game, but that is the latest as of yesterday on what's going on with that. So interesting nonetheless, right?
Yeah, Andy, this is like the beginning of Prometheus, no? Right?
That's exactly the point I was going to raise, Beth, is that what I think we learned from what's been, sort of revealed about Strawberry is that Strawberry is the initiative that OpenAI has behind the curtains that's chasing artificial general intelligence. So it's their most advanced model. They're not going to release that to the public, but they're going to let that Prometheus level, as it evolves, they're going to let it develop other models that are released to the public. And so there will be a tiered kind of arrangement here. Inside OpenAI, there's something much more powerful that's being, shown to the national security folks. And it's also being used to develop AIs that will be released to the general public for general use.
Right. And this is, for people who didn't see the Prometheus show, it's from Max Tegmark's Life 3.0 book. And the idea of that section was they built an AI in the morning, right? And by the evening, it had upgraded itself, I don't know how many times, like a bunch. So
keep going, yeah.
So not only are we getting better models, we're getting better models faster. That's sort of the point that I'm trying to make here, right? Because once it's something that isn't going through human timelines, isn't reliant on human resources to create, AI just speeds that up.
Ooh, all right. The eminence of AGI. Maybe ANDA now. No, I'm completely joking. But we'll call it there. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us. All of our OGs, Cisco, Justin, Jen, and now Rainey, and everybody else who's just joined us for today's show. I wanted to lay out that tomorrow we're talking about RAG systems. So this is the companion show from earlier in the week, and we'll talk about how RAG systems work, and when you should use them and how they will improve your business. And then finally, on Friday, we're going to close up the week with GPT actions. So if you don't know about them, show up on Friday and we'll teach you all about actions. Whether you like them or not, they're there and you probably should use them. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And remember, you can always hit up thedailyAIshow.com, join our newsletter, which comes out every Sunday, and stay up to date with everything we're doing and what's coming up for the next week. See you tomorrow. All right.